This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Welcome back to YAOK. We have producer Matt and we have co-host Erik on the pod today. Hi, friends.
Hello.
Hi.
And I'm so excited for this episode. I mean, I say that literally anytime I record literally anything because I do get really excited about it. But we have another special kind of episode today because we wanted to talk to Erik about the process of marketing a published book. I think this would be the part, like, I don't think that I have enough creative ideas to write a book. But if I happen to have a creative enough idea to write a book, the part I think that might actually stop me would be the marketing part of it, because that just seems really hard.
And I want to shout out that I think Erik is really good at this part.
Erik is really good at the marketing.
Like Erik's going to fight back on this, but I want us to all go back to 2021. A young Erik J. Brown has gotten his first book published and produces a series of videos for his book, like his box opening of his first published book, that involve machetes and electrical drills. And
it was a saber. Please get it right. It was a champagne saber. It was.
And how dare you?
But like, these videos were so funny and people shared it. You know, like, people shared it. Additionally, you organized a 2-hour-long drag game show thing to promote your book along with all of the other queer YA novels that got published that year.
It was longer than 2 hours.
It was 2.5 hours long.
I felt so bad for Biddy B, the drag queen. I pitched the whole thing to her and she was like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's do it. And I think on paper, it seemed like a good idea. And then it wasn't until we were doing it, Biddy was like, shit, I'm going to be singing for 3 hours straight. So I only had 3 breaks, I think, for her to kind of not be singing.
Yeah.
I felt so bad afterwards.
But my point is that I think that you, and maybe it's from your film background, but you are a very creative marketer on your books. And there are a lot of young, want to be published one day writers that listen to this show. So I thought, let's talk to Erik about what works, what doesn't work. Should they be going to conventions and book fair events? Is that more work than it's worth? Be absolutely honest with them, Erik. Tell us.
Don't do anything. Don't become a writer. Run away into the woods and live there forever in peace.
Forever in peace. God, that sounds great.
Doesn't it?
It really does. I think about that every day.
So I will say that marketing is, nobody knows what works. I will be completely honest. Publishers don't even know what works. Because, and that's the main reason that it comes down to authors to do all of their own marketing. Because, for instance, I had, for the first time, HarperCollins set up an event for me, not just for me, it was me and several other authors. And it was my book had just come out. It was the weekend after my book came out. And I think I just got lucky because it was the first day of Pride Month. So they put together this Pride Month book brunch with a bunch of other queer authors at the Princeton Public Library. And it was a free event and anybody could go and talk with us. And it's this is something that the Princeton Public Library and HarperCollins were doing. And I think the turnout was good. But in your mind, if you have like 6 different authors, and I think at least half of us had multiple books coming out. I think there were 1 or 2 debuts at the most. I would think if there's 6 authors in one place, there's a lot of people that are going to be showing up. But it was, I think, maybe 30 people at the most.
Oh, wow.
And that is good for an event, an in-person event, because since the pandemic, in-person events have like kind of tanked.
Yeah.
It's hard to get people to show up for an in-person event. I did a launch for The Only Light Left Burning at Books of Wonder in New York City, and 4 people showed up.
Wow.
Where were you?
One of them was
Elizabeth?
Brian Kennedy, who lives in New York and is my friend. So, of course, he's going to show up.
Right.
And, of course, he was going there anyway to sign copies of his own book. It was like 2 other people that weren't with me, with the other author, basically. And that was it for my 3rd book. And I was very happy that people had pre-ordered the book online, and I had, I think, like 150 copies to sign and personalize and send out all over the world. So I think Books of Wonder was at least like, okay, maybe this event was a bust, but we have all of these pre-orders, so we're okay with that.
Right.
But it's a lot of it, a lot of it's just going to be trying to come up with new ideas. And another thing that HarperCollins did for The Only Light Left Burning was they had me record this audio. I just like was a sentence that they wrote for me for a press release, and I recorded it, and they like put an ad on the radio. I don't know where. It was like 1,000 radio stations across the country. I don't know where it played. I don't know when it played. I don't know if it played. But like they sent it to me, and my agent was even like, he's been in the industry for a long time, and he was like, I have never seen this, but I'm happy to see that they're trying something new. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm happy they're trying something. So like when my first book came out, I knew that publishing wasn't going to do anything, especially for a queer book that is a pandemic book after we just got out of a pandemic. I was like, they're not going to be able to find a way to market this. So I just had to come up with something. Right. So I had Sabers.
Can I ask a weird question? And you can choose to say like pass on this, but I am curious of the 3 books that you've put out. You know, you have All That's Left in the World, you have Lose You to Find Me, and then you have Only Light Left Burning, which is a sequel to All That's Left in the World. Which book did you feel like you did the most to promote? And did the sales reflect that the effort was worth it?
The most was All That's Left in the World. Okay. And the reason I have not done nearly as much for Lose You to Find Me or The Only Light Left Burning is I burned myself out doing stuff for that. I'm like on the fence whether or not it was worth it, because on one hand, if it was worth it, I would have done it more for the other 2 books. But at the same time, I am burnt out, and it's like I'm trying to write other books right now, and I'm trying to do other projects and do things that make money. And I don't think investment-wise it's as good of an idea to do so much, just because the sales were good. Like my All That's Left in the World, my first week of sales, I sold 1,100 copies, which is very, very, very good for a debut, but it's also good for YA in general right now. And that was in America. And in the UK, I was like the top 10 YA books for that week, that time period. And so I feel like me doing so much every single day and posting on TikTok every day and kind of just getting the quick Heartstopper in the Apocalypse pitch out was pretty much the thing that drove all of the sales and made people kind of stop and take notice. But that is not like groundbreaking sales. That's very mid-list sales, and which is good. That means that they're still going to publish my books, but it also means at any time, it could be my last book that I'm ever going to publish, and they'll never publish anything again, which is like the one thing that sucks. And I want to be able to market my books more, but at the same time, I also want to be able to write the best books I can.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time to make sure that your book is good. Like today, I've been trying to work on my 4th book, and it's a lot of just busy work trying to figure out how to start things or how to change things. And so I have to find something else to keep my mind occupied so that I can think about what I am doing. So I've been doing a lot of laundry lately. It's great.
And enter the podcast recording, you know?
Yes.
I was like, yes, I can do that. Let's do it. Let's do a recording.
You're like, literally anytime is fine.
Yeah. I'm free all week. What do you want to do? How long do you want to talk? Do you want to talk for 4 hours? Let's do it.
Well, but to go back to the TikTok stuff for a second, something that you did for Only Light Left Burning that I found delightful, and I think a lot of other people found delightful, was you having people just comment page numbers and you just blind reacting to that page number with zero context, where like it would just say like page 35 and it would just be a 30-second video of Erik being like, oof, real rough page here.
And then avoiding spoilers while I'm trying to talk about it too.
Yeah, like I think that those were really funny and charming, and whenever I'd see them, they had good, it seemed like there was good interaction, right? And I think that comes to a really important thing about marketing, and I think especially marketing in YA. I feel like it's horror and YA are the two big ones where people are buying the books for the person that wrote it more than the story sometimes. And I think that you do a really good job of selling yourself as like a person that clearly people are rallying behind to want to support and buy any book that you put out. And it's what you see with like Joe Hill and Stephen King and other people who aren't related in the horror worlds, like that people get like tied up into those personalities and say like, oh no, I just really like Stephen King's writing style, but I also like Stephen King, the person who's writing editorials for magazines and like this, that, and the other thing. And always appearing in the movie adaptations of his books. And, like there is a way to kind of build your brand to sell yourself in addition to the books. And I think that you really do excel in that in a way. And this is no diss whatsoever to any of the other people that we've had on this podcast, but like, every time that a guest comes on the podcast, I follow them on Instagram and everywhere else. And I genuinely don't see their faces on social media as much as I see your face on social media. Like you really are pushing Erik J. Brown, the brand in person, along with the book.
It's all the Drag Race I've been watching. The brand.
I mean, it is important to think about though. And like you said, the publisher's not going to think about it like that. So it's like you as the author have to determine that the brand of yourself is what you're selling more than even the book.
That's because I also don't want to stick in one specific genre. So I'm actually having this conversation with my UK editors right now with my 4th book is going to be a thriller. And they actually sent me notes last week, and it turns out that there's a couple of scenes that are too intense, and they asked me to kind of dial it back because they're like, we're concerned that your readers are not going to be prepared for this. And I'm like, yes, that is, I understand that. So I'm like trying to like figure out a way to still keep it like the like really tense, scary, exciting thing that I'm looking for, and then still have not scare readers off. But
is it going to be YA still?
Yeah, it's still YA. And they were like, we can market this as a dark thriller, but it's still a little too intense at the end. And I was like, good. So I'm hoping that my personal brand will help sell it, even though people at the end might be like shaking and crying and throwing up.
I'm so excited.
And I know I'm talking about this book and it's probably not going to come out for over a year now, but like I'm really excited by it. And I'm even now, I had a call with my editor in the US yesterday, and I like pitched this idea of like a change that I'm going to make. And I'm kind of excited about it. Like it changes so much of the book. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that before.
Yeah.
That's
so now I'm
so
about
exciting.
That's all the exciting parts of like editing, is like figuring out how the book morphs and changes.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you have to figure out marketing.
Is the marketing your least favorite part?
Yeah, absolutely. So like my favorite part of the marketing is what Matt was talking about with going to like book fairs and festivals and conventions. I love that.
Yeah, I was going to say, are the festivals and conventions better overall than the in-persons, you think?
Yeah, because there's more people willing to show up and take risks on new authors. Like if you follow your local Barnes & Noble on Instagram or something, and they post that Erik J. Brown is coming to sign books today, and he's going to have a Q&A. If you don't know who I am, you might not be like, oh, I might go check that out. But even like if it's down the street from you, if it's a 5-minute walk, you may not decide, oh, I'm going to spend my afternoon doing that.
Yeah.
But if you go to a book festival and it's 2 days and there's one author that you know and a bunch of others that you don't, you might be like, oh, I want to go see that author, but I have to figure out what else to do the rest of the day. I'll take a look at what panels are going on and I'll go and see people.
Well, and that's where the panels, I think, become crucial, right? Because people might not come.
Absolutely.
People might not come to an Erik J. Brown Q&A, but if they see that there's a panel called Queer Post-Apocalyptic Storytelling, they're going to be like, oh, I want to check out that panel. And I know you well enough to know that that spotlight will mostly be on you during that panel, even if there's 8 people at the table.
I share spotlight. I make sure, especially, so I will say when I moderate panels, I think that co-hosting this podcast has helped a lot because I know how to talk to people. But then when I'm moderating panels, I did one at Columbus Book Festival, and it was, first of all, it was outside and it was like 90 some degrees and humid as hell. But we still, I think, had a great time. It was me and 3 other authors. And the way I did it was when I asked them a question, I told whoever was on the stage, the first person that was supposed to speak. And then I selected each one so that everybody was answering the question, but also they weren't being the first one. It wasn't just the same person that has to answer the first time every single time.
Yeah.
And I was just making sure everybody gets their time in the sun. And that's because I think that's important on panels. And you have to make sure that you don't like kind of step on anybody else's toes, and because these are your coworkers.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be a community together.
Well, 2025.
And then like, even if I see somebody else like not like on the panel that's like not like doesn't feel like they're as engaged, I'll kind of turn to them and be like, did that happen with you ever? Kind of just bring them in just to throw them a softball. 2025,
I think the goal is for there to be YAOK presence at some of these book fairs and festivals. Or if nothing else, finding out if they can just get us the recordings of the panels that you moderate that we can always release on the feed too. So I think that's crucial as well.
I think that'd be fun doing like a YAOK live.
That's what I was thinking. Like doing a live would be so fun.
And get like, if we can get one of the bigger name people that's there to sit and talk with us, because I think if people see YAOK live and like we're just talking to like a friend of ours who just published a book recently, it might not.
They wouldn't even put us in the convention center. They'd have us on the sidewalk outside.
Well, wait, I told you guys about my situation with the San Diego Comic-Con. The Weird Algorithm panel was at a library that was a 25-minute walk away from the conventions.
Shut up.
But 40 people still walked that walk just to see our panel.
That's amazing.
And I thought, oh, maybe they're here for like the panel after us. But then when our panel was over, the entire room emptied out. So it's like, oh, wow, they all came for this.
How many people?
Like 30 or 40 people.
That's a lot.
Yeah, for walking that far off of the convention floor to see a bunch of nobodies talk about a thing.
Well, obviously you're not a
like
nobody.
Unless they all just saw like, oh, Weird Al's going to be there. Maybe Weird Al will make a surprise appearance.
They're hoping they're goddamn it.
But to Eric's point, it's really hard to get people to physically show up places.
Yes.
So getting people to walk 25 minutes for your panel is sick. And and also, Eric, the part of the reason why the marketing in general freaks me out is because even when you're doing stuff on social media, like you just have to repeatedly put yourself out there, and doing the in-person events and like putting yourself out there in that way. Does it discourage you when you do in-person events and it's like not as many people as you were anticipating, or does that not really matter that much to you?
It does, because it's like, even like, I know I'm not a huge draw, but I kind of like, if there's 10 people there, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
But like, it's when it's like single digits, then I'm like, oh,
damn.
Man. It's like, even the Books of Wonder one wasn't even the worst event I ever had, because I did one. It was me and 2 other authors, and nobody showed up. It was one. It was one of the authors' editor's mother came. And that was it.
Yeah.
And like I kind of wanted to just go over to the bookseller and be like, so can he stay and talk with her and then we'll just leave? Or she made us do the whole event. And it was just her asking questions. And I was just like the bookseller asking questions. And then when the editor's mom was there, she was like trying to figure out a question, but she could only ask the question for the other author. And then we had to like figure out how to answer it as well.
You know, I was just thinking about this. I think of like when Warped Tour was a thing, right? And like young, wanting to get signed bands would like walk around the lines with a CD player and a backpack filled with CDs. And they'd be like, hey, just listen to a little bit. Like, you really can't do that as an author. You can't just like walk around Barnes and Noble and be like, let me read you a couple pages from my book. like there really is no way. There really is no good way to promote an in-person book signing event to anybody who doesn't already know you. Like,
yeah. I also feel like the way that I find books so much of the time now is unfortunately on like TikTok. Like I'll look up like new books August 2024 or something like that, and like, or I'll look up like scary books 2024, like whatever, and I'll try and narrow it down that way. And so it's interesting because part of me is always like, the influencer space and content creator space is so interesting, because so often I think like it almost feels useless. Like, who's buying this stuff? Like, who's using the discount codes, and who's like, but when it comes to books specifically, bitch, it's me. Like, I am there. Yeah. I am the person who's like adding things to my Goodreads or putting them on an Amazon wish list or physically going to Barnes and Noble and buying them. And like that stuff is actually really helpful. Like, especially book recommendations are extremely helpful, because you had to sit your ass down and read that whole thing before you made the TikTok.
My like no lie is that this podcast, it's been like every guest that's been on, I'm like, man, they're so cool. And then I like buy like 5 of their books.
Yeah.
It's like this podcast has really opened up my scope on that.
I do wish that TikTok, like, I know they have the TikTok shop, which like I get every time I'm on TikTok, usually it's like one video that's actually my interest. Yeah. And there's 12 videos in a row that are annoying. Something I saw on the TikTok shop by mistake. And it's like, oh, you like this here.
Yeah.
And I originally, like, I started looking into all of this stuff because they keep like I think they're just like inviting everybody to be a TikTok shop creator. And so I clicked on the link at one point and I was like, all right, let's see what this does. And I was like, I wonder if I can sell my books, because if I'm talking about my books and there's just a link to buy it right there, it would be so much easier. Because then I don't have to be like, oh, go to wherever you buy books. Because that's the question I get probably the most is, oh, where do I buy your books? It's like literally anywhere you buy books.
Right.
So I like was looking into it, and then I found out in order to sell my own books, I have to be the shop for that. Oh. Which means I would have to buy bulk copies of my book to leave in my basement,
and then like
ship it mail
yourself?
Out every fucking week. And I was just like, no. not doing it. So no, I get like an email every single day saying, verify your information on TikTok Shop. I'm like, no, I'm not going to.
Do it, Eric, and send them to me. I'll ship them with a YAOK bookmark inside every one of them.
with a QR code to the pod.
Yeah.
Storms are brewing. Crocs Echo Storm, that is. It's their most striking sneaker that is the perfect blend of form and function. From a sink-in soft feel to a seamless slip-on design, the Storm will help you build your streetwear style while supporting you wherever the day takes you. Plus, there are brand new colorways you won't want to miss. Shop Crocs Echo Storm on crocs.com today.
Whoa. Landing an account this big will totally change my landscaping business. It's going to mean hiring more guys and more equipment and new trucks for the new guys to drive the new equipment in. I don't know if I'm ready.
You can do this, and Ford Pro FinSimple can help. Our experts are ready to make growing pains less painful for your business with flexible financing solutions that meet the needs of your business today when you need them. Get started at fordpro.com/financing.
In the darkest corners of the internet, a nameless, formless entity has been growing. No one dares question where it was created or what it wants, but those who have been entranced by its musings chant its blood-curdling name in unison. Horror Movie Night! Find Horror Movie Night on your favorite podcasting app or at hmnpodcast.com.
I will say that bookmarks are a great thing. I always try to have, like for in-person stuff, I try to have things to give out. So bookmarks, stickers, I have these little
condoms, as we learned from a past
condoms.
guest.
If you have a sex positive book like Anna did, and then I have these little signature cards. I forget what they're called. Book plate. So and they all say Eric J. Brown wrote this book.
Oh!
and I just sign it for them.
Funny.
I'm also trying to do, I was like, after my Books of Wonder book launch fiasco when only 5 people showed up, I was talking to my partner about like what I can do to kind of get people to show up for stuff. And he was like, why don't you do baseball cards? And I was like, wait, that's actually a great idea. So now I'm commissioning art of characters from each of my books to print onto baseball cards. And then it's just going to be a super limited thing of like, I'll get like maybe 150 or 200 of each character that I will only be giving out at book festivals or events in person, and be like, if you don't come, you don't get it. And then you don't get the whole set.
So
you can maybe trade.
So,
I mean, it's like silly, but
yeah, but it's fun. It's different.
You reached out to me about this, and I'll tell this story on here. Is the horror podcast I do, Horror Movie Night, for the last 4 years have done convention specific trading cards, where it'll be for that whole year, we'll have like 200 trading cards of movies that we've covered on the podcast. And it'll be like the movie poster on the front. And then when you flip it over, it's like one scene from the movie and like a couple fun facts about the movie. And then it will say like, listen to podcast episode number and like whatever number we talked about that movie at hmmpodcast.com. We just stopped producing them because we were at a convention and the director of one of the movies that we had a trading card for was there, and we got all excited and brought them the card like, hey, we loved your movie, we loved it so much we made this trading card to promote our podcast on it. And his response was literally his response was, you know that you have no legal right to do this. And we were just like, okay, then. So like we're done doing this trading cards. Eric, you're in a lot better situation because it's your own original.
Yeah.
And I'm paying for the art too.
Right.
So
but we covered a lot of things. So we covered TikToks, we covered in-person events, we covered doing conventions and stuff like that. Is there anything that we haven't covered before we wrap up that you feel like, hey, I can't guarantee this will always work, but this certainly worked for me?
I think TikTok is the one thing that worked for me the most. And it is unfortunate though, because you're kind of reliant on the algorithm. So one of the most frustrating things is like, okay, well, as soon as you figure out the algorithm and how to get people, like get on people's For You page, all of a sudden they'll change the algorithm and you have to figure it out again.
Yeah.
And like for a while it was, I think when my biggest video, it was that time in, I think 2022, when they were trying to get videos that were under 10 seconds. And so like the sweet spot was somewhere between 6 and 8 second videos. And on top of that, they wanted people who were posting every day. And so I was posting every single day, trying to get the sales of All That's Left in the World up so that they would ask me to write a sequel. And I think after doing it for about a week and a half, I was getting a little exhausted because you have to come up with new content every single day. And I think I was at Barnes & Noble just doing a random book signing on a Saturday, and my alarm goes off to remind me to do it. And I was like, shit, I totally forgot to make something for today. And so I basically took my phone and I started recording it, and I recorded just the table really quick, panning over, and that was it. And then I wrote a paragraph of what the book was about, and I put a trending song on. And that ended up getting like, I think, 600,000 views. And
damn,
it was because it was a 6-second video. The paragraph you couldn't read in 6 seconds, so it repeated at least 2 or 3 times by the time you'd finish reading it. So TikTok was pushing it because it was a 6-second video and because people were watching it over and over. And then all of a sudden it just went on everybody's For You page, even if they didn't read books. It just went on there. And that one ended up doubling my sales for the week. Like actually, I think it was more than doubling my sales. I think I ended up selling like 500 copies that week.
Whoa.
And yeah, that was way more than doubling my sales, because I think I was only selling like maybe 80 copies a week at the time, which is good. But when it goes up to like 500, I think I sold more than Megan McCain's book came out that week, and I sold more than her. So I was very excited about that. But it's just frustrating when they change things like that. I understand that a company has to change things constantly to keep selling their product, but it's frustrating when you're trying to figure out what is working and you're just kind of throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where you get the frustrating place where like you do kind of need to look into stuff. Like at the end of the day, doing this podcast is very helpful with your marketing, right? And like, even with the podcast that I have, we've had to start moving towards more newsletters because you're constantly fighting this uphill battle of every social media app changing the accessibility that people who are actively following you are able to see your content. So like having something like a podcast or like a newsletter where you are fully in control of that list of names and contacts, and you're sending directly to an audience on a regular basis is kind of like gold right now, because you could have 10 million followers on Instagram and then out of nowhere the algorithm changes up and only 1,000 of them see anything that you post in a given month. Like,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I literally had this conversation. I had like an hour and a half long conversation with my manager yesterday, because I'm always like trying to figure out what I should be doing on social, especially making like any sex related content is really tough. And so I get like content violations constantly. But then when I'm like, the alternative is then what am I posting, like hot girl stuff? And then I feel stupid, but it's like, then I need to like balance the scales. So anyways, so we were talking about that, and he was like, honestly, the less you like think about the things that you share, and the more that you're just like, literally when you described the TikTok that went viral, I was like, I'm not surprised even a little bit, because every single time I prepare something that like, oh, this is a trending sound, so I'm going to make this video. And I decided these are the like I was thinking about the, like the very demure trend that's happening right now.
Which I didn't even see the video. I just heard everybody using the word demure, and I was like, why is everyone using the word demure all of a sudden? I don't hate it. Great word. A+ vocab word.
I've never seen a trend take off so quickly in my whole life. And I also saw an English teacher on TikTok being like, I am so here for people. If we're just going to start expanding people's vocabulary, by all means, demure. And then he like was using other ones. But anyways, I was thinking about that and I was trying to make a video with that. And I was like, this feels so fucking dumb. I'm doing this and I'm holding like lube. And I'm like, this feels so dumb. Like, I don't want to do this. And I know that this video is not going to do well. But yesterday, in my kitchen, there was a bird that got stuck in my fucking house.
Boy, was there, because I got that fed to my For You page yesterday.
God. And I was like, as this was happening, I was like, this would be the thing that ends up taking off. And if I spend all of this time on a trending sound and like really put time and effort into it, I know it's going to do absolute trash in numbers. It's always the thing that you like didn't plan for, always the thing that like you just threw your camera up and you decided that that was what you were going to post that day. Because people really feed off of authenticity. And it's really hard to plan for authenticity. So you just have to like keep it pushing, and it sucks.
I literally was like scrolling through TikTok last night in bed on my For You page, not even on my followers page, like because I follow people, but not on like who I was following, just like scrolling through the For You, and you popped up, and I kind of like scrolled past it for a second and then was like, did she say there was a bird loose in her house? And scrolled back down.
Okay, and the crazy thing is,
I love that you scrolled past. You're like, oh, Alyssa, see enough of her. Wait, bird.
Fair. No, because like, so to be fair, Matt and I have had this conversation before. He likes me much better in real life than he does social media, Alyssa, and I think that that's really
like
fair.
That's everybody.
Yeah, that's fair.
Everybody on social media is in real life. People are way more interesting.
I would agree. And Matt has the benefit or unfortunate consequence of knowing me more in real life than most people do. But anyways, so the bird thing was also funny because when I was in Jersey last week, I forgot to bring my Strattera. And so I was just not on my ADHD medication for like a week. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't need it. Maybe I'm actually fine.
Famous last words.
I would like to then just bring your attention to there being a literal bird in my house, which was the reason that there was a bird in my house was because I left the side door open because the dogs like to go lay on the porch and I was on a phone call. So I left the side door open and I was like, it's probably fine. I'll close it a little bit later. Forgot. And then I heard something like banging into the wall. So I was like, what the hell is that? And I saw that it was a bird. It was a tiny bird. And I was like, oh my God. And it was under my baseboard heater, which was off. So it was not like going to cook or anything. But I was like, oh my God. And the dogs paid attention to it for a little while. And then they like moved on to other things. So I was like, you know what? This dog is going to freak out. I don't want to give it a heart attack. I'm just going to like let it chill out. I'm on this phone call still. And then after the phone call, I'll get the bird. I'll get the bird out of the kitchen. And then my mom came home and I was like, okay, good. I'll tell her about the bird. Forgot. Forgot. And then after all of this is said and done, I was like, here's the thing. I think it was so brave of me to think that I didn't need to be on ADHD medication. Very controversial, very brave. Holy F did I was like, that was crazy.
Well, I think that's a perfect spot to wrap up this week's episode. Okay.
Anyway, I'm back on my Strattera.
Yeah. Marketing is really important. You probably still need your ADHD medicine.
Definitely.
Those are our two takeaways.
God. Yeah.
All right, real quick, what is everybody reading before we call it a day?
I'm reading The Haunting of Blackwood Manor, I think is what it's called.
Okay. I
went into Barnes & Noble without a plan, which I never do. And I was like, I'm just going to like see what's on the tables. And that one caught my eye. And I've actually really been enjoying it. I rarely find horror that I like breeze through. And this one, I'm like halfway through in like 2 days, which is great. So that's what I'm reading.
Nice. I'm going to bounce off that because I'm also reading something horror. I took a brief pause from YA, and I'm reading Joe Hill's 21st Century Ghosts, which is a collection of a bunch of short stories. The short story that most people would know from that is The Black Phone. That was a movie a couple years ago with Ethan Hawke.
Creepy movie.
I definitely like the movie more than the short story. The short story was good too, but like the movie, obviously, I mean, we're talking about like a 12-page book being turned into a 2-hour movie. The 2-hour movie just really, breathed through the material a little bit.
Really creepy.
But there is, I mean, I think it's the first or the second story is just, I mean, it was like tailor written for me. It's where the title of the book comes from, which is about a haunted movie theater, but like not haunted in a creepy way. It's that a girl who loved cinema died inside the theater, and and her ghost gets so excited watching the movies that she'll sometimes appear and talk to the patron about the movie that they're watching. And it's about the boy. When she first died, there was a boy who sat next to her and became so obsessed with her that he went on to buy and run the movie theater to make sure that she always had movies to watch. And it's like,
really
like they're all like almost like gothic love stories in a lot of ways, with the exception of Blackfoot, which is like truly a horrific tale. But the rest are like very like gothic romance tales. I've really been enjoying them. So I'll just knock out a story a night before bed.
What's it called?
21st Century Ghosts.
Okay. Adding
And
it.
for those of you who don't know, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. He wrote Horns. He wrote Nos 482, I think is what it is.
It's Nosferatu, but
yeah, it's a license plate for the for the vampire that's kidnapping children is Nos 482
and taking them to Christmas Land. Joe Hill's really good. I like him. Did you read Strange Weather?
I haven't yet, but my controversial take is that I actually think that consistency-wise, Joe Hill is better than his father.
That's not fair, because Joe Hill does not release like 1 to 2 books a year like Stephen King does. So.
And who's twisting his arm to do that?
Right. No one asked.
Nobody, but...
No one asked.
Well, first of all, cocaine was twisting his arm for a while in the 80s.
Okay, touche. Also, I feel like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I remember hearing that, well, I know that like no one really edits Stephen King's work anymore. So like it's... Yeah. A lot of what you're reading is just like first draft untouched.
They copy edit.
I believe I remember that Joe Hill, before he even like submits his books to publishers, like rewrites it 3 or 4 times. And I think he said something like, I would write it and then I would read it and write down every part of the book that wasn't important. And then try to read, like he just kept trying to write it tighter and shorter versus Stephen King, who I think just keeps trying to write the books longer and longer with every.
Yeah.
Listen, Stephen King's the kind of person who can just ramble, and I'm like, yep, go for it.
I like his rambling way more as like the editorial in it. Like I used to love reading Entertainment Magazine just for that 1-page editorial that he would have in the back. All right, Eric, how about you? What are you reading?
I'm reading a thriller. It's an adult thriller by Karen Slaughter, who, if you don't know Karen Slaughter, great thriller name. And that's her real name too.
Yeah.
But it is, I've been watching, there's a show on ABC that is based off some of her books, but her books are very, very, very dark. But ABC has kind of made her, one of her characters, into like more of a fun, kind of funny detective.
Is that the Ellsworth or whatever it is?
No, it's Will Trent.
Okay.
And so, but I'm reading one of the other series. The book is called A Faint Cold Fear, and it is about a bunch of suicides on a college campus that turn out to not be suicides. And it was just one of those things. I was, the other day, I was trying to find something to read. And I usually, what that means is I go into my little library and I go to all the books that are on my TBR pile, and I start reading the first chapter. And this was the second one I picked up. I don't know why I did. And I started reading it, and I sat down and I read the entire first chapter, which was, I think, 40 pages.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, guess this is the book I'm reading. So
wait, what's that one called?
A Faint Cold Fear.
My TBR is just going to be it's just never going to narrow down. It's always going to be.
It's the third in a series, but it's the kind of thing where there's so many of them, you don't actually have to read each of them. Because I think after about 50 pages in, I stopped myself and I was like, wait, did I read the second one? Because this is the third one. And I was like, I had to go onto my Goodreads and be like, okay, yes, I have read the second one. And then I tried to read what it was about, and it didn't help at all. And I was like, okay. I read it like 4 years ago. I was like, all right, well, don't remember it. But.
Like, if you say so, sure.
Yeah.
I've got something exciting for you guys too, is that we have our first listener submitted book recommendation. At The Real Jack Rose messaged us and said, a book that I think you would love is called Voyage of the Damned by Francis White. It's a YA fantasy murder mystery set on a ship with all types of representation by main character whose sass is next to none. The book had me laughing out loud, getting angry, and shocking twists and sadness all tied up into one novel.
That sounds like a book that Erik would have written.
Yeah, probably.
I'm going to read it now.
Yeah, but
a magical and romantic romp of a murder mystery.
There you go. But that's just a friendly reminder that at YAOK Podcast on Instagram, you can submit all types of little mini reviews of what you're reading, and if you think we'd like it. So be like at The Real Jack Rose and let us know what you've been indulging in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode of YAOK.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.